Hello guys, this is Mr. Evans, your teacher again, and this lesson will be on the life of the Buddha before he became the Buddha. Now Buddha means, let's go to the red. Buddha means the enlightened one. Enlightened means to be wise and to be smart, and so Buddha had to become the Buddha. But before he could do that, he had his own average name. He was an average person, and his name was Siddhartha Gautama. This is an A. And so he was an average person. But let's get into that, his life before he became the Buddha. Now, his early life, well, he was born around 563 BC, so that's almost 2,500 years ago, or a little over 2,500 years ago. And he was born into the Kshatriya social caste. The Kshatriya social caste. It's over here. And as you can see, or as you remember, those were the warriors. And he was born into like a high level of the Kshatriya class. He was actually a prince, and so he was born very, very wealthy. He lived a life of luxury, and so he had a lot of gifts and happiness around him. But he was not happy. In fact, he began to really wonder, and he was unsatisfied. But he began to wonder why people were suffering. Why did people have to endure and live with people dying or pain and all of this suffering? And he began to kind of question his own wealth and why people are still suffering even if they're wealthy. And so he really started to focus on that. And he focused so much that he kind of gave up being a prince, and he decided to kind of wander around and give up all possessions to try and find the meaning of this suffering. And so he decided to search for answers, because he couldn't figure out why people suffered. And so this quest to discover the meaning of life, the meaning of why people suffered, caused him to leave his home before he reached the age of 30. Oh, and we'll move on. Sorry. Now, Siddhartha Gautama traveled for many, many years. The average, they think it's around 6 years or so that he traveled, but no one really knows, exactly for sure. But they know that while he was traveling around, he had companions, people who were similar to him, people who also were living similar to him. Trying to figure out their own path in life and things like that. But while they were doing that, while they were traveling around for these years, sometimes together, sometimes alone, Siddhartha Gautama was doing something called fasting, which is going without food. Going without food. And this is supposed to help him find this enlightenment, this knowledge, because it's another sacrifice, and it can do stuff to your body, kind of make you go crazy if you don't eat food. We've all experienced that, but it's the fasting is one method, one way that they're going about trying to do this. Another method is through meditation, and this is when you're focusing your mind on spiritual things. Spiritual ideas. And it's really intense focus. You're not thinking about anything else other than one aspect of your spiritual being, or one question you're trying to find an answer to, or many things. So the meditation can be very, very powerful, a very powerful thing. And so together, he's going through this for a long time, but it takes him years. He's still not figuring out the answer, and he becomes frustrated, but he does not give up. Finally, one day, he stops near the Ganges River, a town called Gaya, and he sits underneath a banyan tree, and he starts to meditate. And he meditates for a long period of time. They think about 7 weeks of meditation. That's a long time without moving, with just thinking about things so after this 7 weeks, he kind of has something called an epiphany, and this is when he realizes where human suffering comes from. This is his big wake-up moment. An epiphany is when he realizes and wakes up. He now becomes the Buddha. He becomes enlightened. He knows about suffering, and we'll move on. So now this is what the Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama, now that he's enlightened, this is what he learned in that epiphany. He learned where human suffering comes from, and he believes that it comes from three different things. The first is wanting what we like, but we do not have. So think of it as like what you want, your need. You think you may need the new iPhone. Here's a picture of an iPhone. It says it's a 3G, but it's still an iPhone. Some of us may not have an iPhone. Some of us may really, really want an iPhone. And because we really, really want this iPhone, it causes us suffering. Because all of that want of something that we don't have is causing us like mental pain, mental suffering. Because we want that perfect new iPhone. So that is one way that we suffer. Another one could be, wanting to keep something we have already. Wanting to keep something we have already. So we all have our computers. You're probably watching this video on your school computer. We all want this. The threat of it going away could cause you suffering. So for instance, if you do something bad, maybe your mom or dad threaten to take away your computer or your video games or watching Frozen or something like that, and that might cause you pain because you want to keep your computer so you can do the things that you want. So because you want to keep something you already have, you love it so much, something you already have, you love it so much, that could cause you suffering because you're afraid that you might lose it. So that is the second thing that might cause you suffering. And the third one is not wanting what we dislike, but we have. So I put an example here of homework. Now, I'm sure you all love listening to my voice at home, but this is homework, watching this video, isn't it? And you don't like homework because no one likes homework, but unfortunately it's necessary. So because you dislike homework and you have it, you are suffering. I am causing you to suffer. I don't mean to. I feel like this is really interesting. You love my voice, but homework is probably something that most people dislike, but you have. So you are suffering. So these are the three things that the Buddha, 1, 2, and 3, believes causes human suffering. And this is his moment when he becomes enlightened. When he becomes enlightened, the Buddha goes off and he teaches those people that used to be with him. He teaches them about what he has learned. And when he becomes teaching, because he is now enlightened, now is when he gets the name, the Buddha. Now is when the Buddha name starts. So he becomes enlightened with this knowledge, and he becomes now the Buddha. So no longer Siddhartha Gautama, you call him the Buddha. Let's move on to the very end. So think about the three things that cause suffering, and I want you to think about all the suffering, the bad stuff that you may hear about or know about in the world, and which do you think causes the most suffering today? You could talk about your own life, or you could talk about big world issues, things that you've seen on the news or something. But I want you to explain, what do you think causes the most suffering today, and explain it. So this should be about one paragraph written, and that's what I need you to turn in for homework today. or tomorrow, next class. Thank you for listening, and I hope I didn't cause you to suffer too much. Bye-bye.